At this time, if George Koulianos would please come forward to talk to us a little bit about the clergy initiatives that Leadership 100 has been supporting. Thank you.
Good morning. On behalf of Father Costas Soteris and the Center for Family Care, thank you for affording us this opportunity, and thank you for your continued support. Today I'd like to speak on the Clergy Initiative. The Clergy Initiative is a new program at the Center for Family Care, so in many respects it's the fruits of your labor and your generosity all these years. The Lilly Endowment was established in the mid-1930s by several members of the Lilly family, and it exists for three reasons. The first, to support education, religion, and community development. As it relates to religion, it asks two fundamental questions that are sort of the basis, the premise for their granting. The first is that they believe that strong congregations play critical roles in the lives of its parishioners and also in the communities where they live. The second, the most important piece of a congregation, is the quality of pastoral leadership that it has leads directly to the health and vitality of that worshiping community. They've done extensive research as it relates to religion and also drawn from other resources and identified a major need amongst religious institutions in America, amongst Christian institutions. Because of that, they've created the national initiative to address economic challenges that are facing clergy and their families. It has two chief aims. The first is to assist churches in developing new and strengthening existing programs as it relates to financial literacy. They've identified a major gap in financial literacy as it relates to clergy, both personally and professionally as it relates to managing and administering parishes. Second, they've identified a vacuum in terms of the lady's appreciation of the special hardships that clergy endure to become clergy. You know, sometimes if you don't ask the right question, you won't get the right answer. And many religious groups haven't really asked the right question for many years, and now these questions are being asked, and we're finding answers that we really didn't know were there. The Lilly Endowment asked Father Costa to apply for their National Initiative grant in February. He formed a steering committee of several clergymen and lay people, and we wrote the grant, and we submitted it in August of 2016 and were awarded the grant Thanksgiving week, November of 2016, and now we have $1 million awarded to us by the Lilly Endowment to further this work as it relates to clergy, financial literacy, and parishioner literacy as it relates to their obligation to their proestamenos. In addition, there will be a ministerial excellence fund that will assist clergy in need. So there are three prongs to this program. The data that part of the exercise in writing the grant is you had to do research. And we were fortunate enough to employ the Danielson Institute to do the research for us. So it was independent. And we also used data from the Atlanta strategic plan as it related to clergy education and clergy evaluation. Each and every one of these data sets are statistically significant, they're sufficiently powered, and you will see that the sample size is significant for all four of these studies. There was also some important work that was done by Dr. George Stavros through the Danielson Institute as it related to trauma and just the emotional hardships that clergy endure as being the first responders. We take for granted that in many respects, our clergy are the Navy SEALs, and they're the first to encounter many difficult situations, and that takes its toll on our clergy. And this is just a summary of the data. From Atlanta, we know that our clergy work hard. You can see that 3/4 of clergy, well, about 2/3 of clergy work anywhere from 50 to 70 plus hours. They're all in. We also know from a research set that we generated in Atlanta where we asked clergy what makes a clergyman sort of a clergyman's clergyman. What are the metrics that identify a strong clergyman? We identified those metrics by intensively interviewing roughly a dozen clergymen. A PhD in industrial psychology did the work for us, who evaluates CEOs around the country. And he applied some of those same precepts to our metropolis. And we generated several key metrics that are important. 2 of the 5 relate to family, which validate Dr. Stavros' work that part of psychological resilience, what increases a clergyman's psychological resilience, is a strong family life, a strong relationship with your presbytera. We intuitively know that, but we now objectively know that as well, which is the role of science. We also asked clergy in our New York study, the study we used as part of the submission of the grant, what the average salary was. And we see that 80% of our clergy make under $105,000 a year. But what you have to take into account is the average respondent was in their 50s, and the predominant response area was the Northeast, which has one of the highest cost of livings in America, so that 40% of respondents from the Northeast, and the rest were randomly distributed around the country. So you have to keep those metrics in mind. 40+% came from high cost of living states. They were in their 50s, in their peak of their careers, and they averaged under $105,000 a year. I'm sure there's some of you in this room that would love to only pay $105,000 in annual income tax every year. We asked a critical question: how much have you saved for retirement? And we find that more than half have less than $50,000 in their retirement plans. We asked, how much do you have in savings outside of your retirement plans? And we found that just under half have less than $5,000. It's important to note that because the deductible on the clergy health plan is roughly $5,000 a year. We also asked them, what kind of stress is this creating for you? In other words, we're asking objectively, do we have the same problem that the Livy Endowment is seeing around the country in other denominations? And you can see that just over 2/3 of our clergy report mild to overwhelming financial stress. Then we subdivided the data set to try to see what type of parish was the greatest stress. And you find from the top 2 bars, you see the darker blue and the light blue is high and average financial stress. If you look at the high financial stress, you see that 100 parishes seem to be the break point. So, 100 families in a parish. So if you have under 100 families in your parish, the challenges are a little greater financially, and the larger the parish, the more financially stable the parish is, and the less stress the clergyman encounters. So we also asked a question, which was a difficult question to ask, is, have you ever considered leaving the ministry? And what's amazing is here we have the first responders on the front line that are many times faced with situations that are very difficult, that are very stressful for them and psychologically take their toll on them, that are working hard, but they wouldn't trade what they're doing for the world. And for that, we should be very indebted to them. You can see that only a small percentage are considering, or even remotely considering a career change. So we're very fortunate to that, and I thank all of you for that are here. So what will happen going forward is that we will have educational programs that will go throughout the country and to the seminary that will educate the laity that our priest feeds us, and we have an obligation to feed him and his family. The clergy family is a special unit, and we're just now beginning to appreciate as lay people how special and unique that unit is and how critical it is to the sustenance, to the growth of a parish. We'll also educate our clergy on financial literacy, on managing their personal finances, on planning their retirement, their child's college education. We have additional data that show that they've underfunded their children's education. Many have significant debt already when they're in the seminary, not because of Leadership 100's generosity, but because they come in with families And with families, you have to borrow money sometimes to be able to feed your family while you're in seminary. There are several variables that come into play. So we will teach clergy. We will offer them the opportunity to learn how to manage their money. We will have programming that will teach them how to read a church financial statement. And we will also create a ministerial excellence fund that will help pay for financial planners for clergy and help them with grants up to $10,000 for any financial need they may have. So in summary, we've underappreciated the strain that our clergy are under. We've underappreciated how special a unit the clergy family is. And we've realized that financial pressure inhibits their effectiveness as clergy, not only in the United States for the Greek Orthodox Church, but for any church in the United States, or probably anywhere in the world, that the more secure you are, the more you can reach out. So I thank you for your time, and I appreciate this opportunity. Father Costa thanks you as well. Thank you.